If you have recently started working with software development and you've ever felt imposter syndrome, then hear me out, because in this video I'm going to be giving you a few tips on how you can better approach this imposter syndrome and how you can be more confident about your skills. In my case, I am a mechanical engineer who decided to switch into software development, which meant that in the beginning I was suffering a lot from imposter syndrome. I've always felt like my colleagues were on a different level than I was. And so stay to the end, because I'm going to give you a few tips that really help me approach this anxiety better. All right, the first thing that I did was to reframe the way I was approaching this anxiety of imposter syndrome. And the main thing here to notice is that it's a good thing if you're feeling imposter syndrome. It just means you're on the right way. Like, think about it. If you are comfortable in your job, if you're always doing the same thing, just cruising along, eventually your skills are going to get outdated and you're not going to be valuable anymore. And by definition, you get paid by how much value you can bring to the world. And the only way to achieve that is if you keep learning and keep doing something that's difficult. And so the way I started approaching this is that's the whole point, right? If I'm feeling imposter syndrome, if I feel like I'm not enough, that I have a lot to learn, that's the whole point why I got this job in the first place. Because if it wasn't like this, then I wouldn't want it. I know it might feel very risky at first, when you're feeling this imposter syndrome, because you don't know what you're doing exactly. You're afraid people are not going to respect you as an equal. And in my case, it was exactly like this. I was working a mechanical engineer job, which was very comfortable. I knew exactly what I was doing. I felt respected and I felt like I was very competent. And going back to a state where I didn't know much, where I was a learner, it was very difficult. It's counterintuitive at first, but I realized that the safe choice here, the safe thing to do, was to actually get a job that's difficult, that's going to set you apart. Because the fewer people that can do your job, that means that the more valuable you become. And that's going to be better for you if you want to find a job in the future. You become protected. You have this thick skin that no matter what happens, your skills are valuable. And then you won't find a problem in the future if you ever have to find a new job. Versus if you just stay with the same skill set your whole life. If you do get fired someday, then it's going to be much more difficult to get something, because there's a lot more people who are capable and willing to do the same job as you. So imposter syndrome, it's a good thing. It means you're on the right track and you're learning hard things that are valuable. All right, my second point here is that I realized that nobody is inherently better or smarter than you. They simply dedicated more of their time to their trade. So I'd always feel insecure. I would think that people are born smarter than I am, but I didn't realize we all have the same amount of time in the world. We all have 24 hours, 7 days a week, and we just allocate them differently. And I know that's a very common topic, a very discussed theme of what's better, either talent or hard work. And growing up, I was obsessed with these Japanese anime TV shows. I was obsessed with Naruto. And I think especially in Japanese culture, they talk a lot about what's better, hard work versus talent. And what I thought was cool about those shows, that there was always two types of characters. The characters that are geniuses, they're born with all the talents, everything is easy for them. They're just very powerful naturally. And the underdogs, so the characters that really have to fight and train hard for everything. And what I thought was really cool was that eventually in those shows, the underdog heroically overcomes the genius just by sheer hard work. But in the real world, things are a bit different. I'm sure there are people who are geniuses, they're just born like that and they understand topics much faster than others. But I think those are really the tail end of the curve. Most people, the great majority of people, what dictates if they're going to learn something is just how much time they spent on a certain trade, how much time they allocate to a specific skill. And knowing this, it just simply made me see imposter syndrome from a different perspective, because I realized they're not better than me, they're not inherently better than I am. They just allocated their time more towards software development. And as I mentioned, I studied mechanical engineering, which meant I allocated most of my time to mechanical engineering stuff. So I was learning thermodynamics, fluid mechanics, and I probably know more about those topics than those senior software engineers. So that made me feel much better, because they're not inherently better. It's just how they allocated their time. And it's just a matter of time before I allocate as much time to be on their level. So if you're feeling imposter syndrome, just know that what really separating you from those senior developers is simply time. So just a matter of dedication and patience, and just sitting down and spending more time looking at code and trying to solve problems that eventually you can't help but to reach their level. All right, my third point is to see your peers and the people you work with as mentors and not as competitors. And I feel like especially if you have a more competitive personality, sometimes you can get intimidated if you're working with people that have a lot more experience than you. That was my case, and I've always felt like I had to keep up this facade of a smart guy that knows everything just to impress them. But that was really backfiring. One of my best buddies in college, he said something to me that really stuck with me. He gave me a tip, and he said that we should own the stuff that we don't know. So instead of pretending like we are good at everything and we have to be smart and be better than everybody else, we just simply, own the stuff we don't know and be honest about it. If somebody asks you something that you don't know, you just say, I don't know it, like teach me, let me learn more, instead of trying to pretend like you know everything. Those things come out anyways, and people can always see what level you are. As a software developer, people can just see right through you and see how much experience you actually have. I remember doing one of my first software developer jobs, was an internship back then, and the CTO, he was a very smart guy. He had worked for FANG companies as senior developer and much higher, I think. But he was given a meeting about cybersecurity, and he was going through the Linux terminal very fast, typing all these commands that I had never seen in my life. And he was teaching everybody how to do something that completely went over my head. I had no idea what he was talking about. But later that day, we're all sitting for lunch. We are talking about the CTOs talk about cybersecurity. And all these developers, it seemed like they all understood what he was talking about. And imposter syndrome really hit me really hard because I had no idea what happened, but it seemed like everybody else did. And instead of trying to own the things I didn't know, right? Instead of trying to own the fact that I didn't understand what happened, I try to play this facade again, and I try to pretend like I knew about everything that happened. So I just kept trying to answer, the questions that those senior developers were asking about the presentation, but it made no sense. I was just making stuff up just to seem like I knew something, but I could tell people saw right through me that I had no clue what I was talking about. Had I instead been honest about the things that I didn't know and just say, I had no clue what happened, I'm so confused, can you guys explain to me? I feel like in addition to actually learning the stuff that he taught us, I would have built this connection with people, as mentors, and they would have seen me with different eyes. Like everybody loves to be appreciated by their knowledge, and they would have seen this guy that is willing to learn more and that was honest about the things that he didn't know. And they would probably build a much deeper connection with me, and they would be my mentors. So if you're in a similar situation and there are people in your team that you feel intimidated by because they simply know way more than you, instead of trying to prove something to them, to try to look a certain way, just ask for help and be honest about the things that you insecure or that you don't know about. And you're gonna build a lot of mentors that can help you through your journey. But I hope these tips were helpful for you. These 3 tips, they help me become more confident about my skills as a software developer and really help me, go every day to the office and be in a mindset to learn and to be better every single day. So if you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.